Nate Boyer, thank you for joining me on CI Living TV to talk about your new film, your directorial debut, MVP. Now, MVP is a movie and an organization that you co-founded. Let's first start with telling our audience a little bit about the organization MVP and its purpose.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me, Pamela. I really appreciate it. So MVP stands for Emerging Vets and Players, and the organization brings together combat vets and former professional athletes and helps them find purpose and identity and really a team again when they lose the locker room and they lose that uniform, whether it's camouflage or a jersey. That experience can be really tough. I did both. I was in the military for about 10 years. And then I went and played college football and briefly in the NFL. And so I lost the camouflage. I lost the jersey. I lost the camaraderie, the brotherhood, the sense of purpose and mission, all those things. And it was in the same year, 2015 is when I ended my military service completely. I'd been in the National Guard while I was back in college. And later that year, I went to the Seattle Seahawks and I got to play in one game, which I'm very grateful for. But then I got released and it ended. And it was like, I just felt so alone and kind of lost and like I'd peaked at a pretty young age. And it was scary, and I was considering going back in the military. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I met Jay Glazer, who I co-founded Emerging Vets and Players with, who's a Fox NFL analyst. And he's like, man, I've heard this story from so many MMA fighters and football players through my years. And I know you've had this conversation with a lot of vets. So let's figure out a way to bring these two groups together because there's a mutual respect between athletes and veterans. And that's why MVP started. And ultimately, we ended up making this film, and it's about the genesis of MVP.
Very good. And your character that you play, because you wear three hats, writer, director, and star in this film, and your character of Zephyr, is that based on any one person or is it an amalgam of various people?
It is an amalgam, but it's the backstory is based off of two individuals, a guy named Denver and a guy named AJ. Denver was in the Marine Corps in 2-7, the unit that we talk about in the film. And they lost 29 guys on back-to-back deployments overseas. And then now to date, the numbers are even higher than it says at the end of the film there, but they've lost 56 to suicide, which is just incredibly tragic. I mean, a battalion, that battalion is not that many people. It's, maybe 1,000. And then AJ's backstory, AJ growing up, he was homeless at times, with his mother, and eventually sort of left home, joined the Navy, and kind of vowed to never come back. And we met Denver and AJ in 2016 when MVP was just starting out, the organization. And these guys have been with us from the beginning. They really built what MVP is today. With how many veterans and athletes we serve. We serve thousands across the country, and we meet up every week in our various chapters in the gym, and we train together, and then we huddle up and just talk through our stuff, for lack of a better term. And Denver and AJ now are on our national staff. AJ is our national marketing director, and Denver is our national outreach director. They're our first two employees. And so when we started building the story out and the way that they got this all kind of going, it just made sense to sort of base that Zephyr character off these two people. And then the athlete, same thing. Will Phillips, that character is also an amalgam of a lot of the athletes that have come through our doors, and all the stories. I mean, that's how we wrote the script. It's really transcribed more than written, to be honest.
Oh, wow. That even hits a harder note of tragedy.
Right. Right.
Mo McRae plays Will, who you just referred to, and he's a football star who's forced into early retirement due to concussions. When you cast Mo, what were you looking for in order to convey that personality, that drive, that athleticism that he conveys?
I mean, first of all, that character had to look the part, which Mo absolutely does. But they also had to have, I think, a certain swagger about them, but also be able to convey an insecurity, and put up that front. It takes a very talented actor to play that character, to play that role. I think it's got a lot more depth than even the Zephyr character in a lot of ways, especially with the family aspect.
Mhm.
And I found Mo, I mean, we'd worked on a film together a few years ago called Den of Thieves, right? And I talked to the director of that movie, Christian Gudegast. He's a good friend of mine, and he's helped mentor me throughout this project. And we were 2 months out from shooting, and it was like time to find this Will Phillips character. And Christian was like, he recommended nobody else. He's like, it's Mo McRae, trust me.
Wow.
Because Mo, not only is he talented, not only is he incredibly hardworking and prepares more than anybody, but he had been so close on some huge projects and kind of finished second multiple times. And I was like, that's Will Phillips. Like what Mo is experienced from as an actor in that in a very competitive field. That's
Right.
what Will felt like. He just was the almost guy so many times. And so I knew he would be able to connect to that after meeting and talking to him about the story, but also, he's an athlete. I mean, he's an athletic guy, and he had to really have that gravitas and kind of bring that to the role as well.
Right. And I have to say, I always compile a list of favorite scenes throughout the year from various movies. And one of the scenes that he is in when he talks about his mother, that will never leave my mind. Incredible,
Yeah.
incredible performance.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I mean, that story for people that, I mean, when they see it, they'll know what you're talking about. That story is a story I've heard before, you know what I mean? And it's
yeah,
like, I don't want to say it's crazy. It makes sense. It actually makes sense when you hear it, and your heart breaks for the
yeah,
situation, but it's very real. And he played it very real.
he did. He absolutely did. Identity and home are two key elements within this film. And there was a line that really struck a chord with me. It was, you can't go home until you find home. Can you tell me what that means to you and your character and how it impacted your character in the movie?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that line is delivered by the actor Dan Loria, who plays Jim Zenner. Dan, people know him as the dad on The Wonder Years, or Vince Lombardi on Broadway. He's a Vietnam veteran, which was
Oh,
really cool. So he brought something very special to the character. I mean, all the vets portrayed on screen were played by actual veterans. But that one was really special because he's from that era. So we got to have that Vietnam vet in that era. But I think that message, you can't come home until you go home, essentially coming home fully, your mind, your spirit, emotionally, mentally, not just physically, from war is a difficult thing. A lot of people feel like a piece of them is still back there.
mhm.
And very literally for the Zephyr character, much like when I was talking about AJ earlier and not wanting to go home after leaving the home, kind of vowing to never go back. Zephyr felt that way, and he'd gone off to combat, and he'd done some things, maybe some things that he wasn't proud of, maybe some things where he felt survivor's guilt over, like, why did I make it back and these other people didn't? Like, I don't deserve to come home. Like, they deserve to come home. They were better men than me. Why am I here? And quite literally for him, he needs to go see his mom. He needs to go to his actual home where he came from and forgive and kind of let go. And that is that process, that step will actually bring the rest of him home from overseas. And that was kind of the idea behind that and the feeling. And it's a feeling that a lot of veterans resonate with and relate to. And it's not easy. It's certainly not easy.
There is another scene in this movie that haunts me. And it gives me a whole new perspective about what veterans experience when they come home from a tour or tours. And that's the scene where you are target shooting and you talk about adrenaline. Tell me about that scene and where it comes from.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that a lot of athletes and veterans definitely relate to. When you work in a high stakes, high octane, adrenaline fueled world, and that's like, I'll say this right now: being in a gunfight, is definitely scary. Most people that tell you I was never scared, I don't know if I believe them. I
Right.
definitely felt fear. And I mean, that's what makes you brave if you're able to overcome that fear and continue on. Um, but you also feel alive in a different way surviving something like that and kind of, getting through something like that. The endorphins and just the rush and um the the life and death of it is kind of crazy. And it is different in sports. Of course, you're not, in combat, and that's never something we make it very clear in the film those are different things.
Right.
But in combat sports, I mean, I can't imagine getting into an MMA cage in front of millions of people and fighting, until somebody taps out. Like that's crazy,
Yes.
and that type of adrenaline. It's a similar feeling. And to know that, to feel that through your 20s, say, if you're lucky, right? Maybe even into your 30s. And then for it to just, you're never going to feel something like that again. To find something that matches that, that's not dangerous. I
Mhm.
think that's why oftentimes a lot of these people turn to some dangerous uh, replacements, right,
Right.
in their life, because they want to feel that high, and it's a
Right.
different kind of high. It's chemically induced from the outside, but it is something that's very common. And yeah, to feel, to find something in your life that makes you feel alive like that again is hard. I'm lucky that I am the type of person that I'm not as worried about failure. I will just kind of go try something new.
Right.
And, for me now, filmmaking is, I'm still learning as I go. And, but I love just putting myself out there and just trying, and even if we fail a little here and there, I'm learning, and that makes me feel that same type of life that I
Right.
felt when I was at war, and I felt when I was playing football on the gridiron. Like it's a similar feeling of excitement and fear and all those things, that I kind of miss.
Right. Right. And I can't believe that this is your first film that you have directed, because it has such poise and nuance and skill that delivers a message on so many different levels. What is it that you hope viewers will take away from this?
Well, first of all, I mean, I had an incredible team of people, and a lot of them veterans behind the camera as well, which is really special. I think every department head besides our cinematographer was a veteran,
Oh,
which is
wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
So it was people like me that were just hungry and wanted a chance. Just give me a chance to try,
Right.
to show you what I can do. But then beyond that, some of our other, producers and some of the people that helped us with the script, very seasoned in this industry and just believed in us. Sylvester Stallone put his name on it because he loves MVP, the organization. He just wanted to see us be successful. And, countless others put that time in. And I want people to walk away from the film feeling like they can have a conversation, not even necessarily with a veteran or an athlete, but with somebody that they feel like they maybe couldn't relate to in the past.
Okay.
Somebody they thought like, I'll never know what that experience is like, so I don't even want to try to learn, and because I just can't relate. And I understand that a lot of times that comes from a place of humility and like, thinking, well, I can't compare what somebody experienced over, at war, so I
Right.
don't even, I can't even have that conversation. And it's not true. Like we need to have that conversation. Like there's a big divide between the civilian and veteran communities often, especially from people that not only didn't serve, but didn't grow up with somebody in their life. I mean, you're fortunate to have, your father that had that experience. And so, but even then, sometimes they never talk about it. And so
No.
people just don't know. And that's tough. But I want people to have those conversations. I want people to be able to learn about us and be like, you know what? I'm not going to compare my life or experience to this person, but I know what that feels like. Like I can feel through this film, like those feelings of not belonging, of feeling like you're not enough, of feeling like um, you'll never be great again. All those feelings, I can actually understand that. And that's the biggest thing, because when MVP started the organization, the charity, and you had these veterans that were living in this homeless shelter, and then you had these Hall of Fame athletes on the same wrestling mat talking about the same things, and both of them being like, oh yeah, I can relate to you. It was crazy just to watch it happen, and it helped both of those groups of people feel less alone and feel like they can relate to more people in society. So that's what I want people to walk out of the theater understanding, that, you know, at the end of the day, we're way more similar than we are different. And we live in very divided times, you know, and any way we can continue to come together, relate to one another, and respect people who have a different background. That's the win. That's the big win here.
Absolutely. One last question for you. Is there anything in the process of making MVP, the film, that you learned about yourself or discovered that maybe you hadn't known before?
You know what I learned? It's kind of a negative thing, but I learned that I have a real problem trusting people at times.
Okay.
And I think that comes from different things in my life, but I need to, it's something I need to practice more and more, because all of us working on this thing, we felt this great responsibility to not screw the story up because of what it's about, right? And it's about our community, and we're doing it ourselves. And we had this pressure of like, you know, it has to be authentic, it has to be real. Like, we can't, if it ever feels not real, we're going to get crucified by the veteran community, you know. And with that pressure, it got to me at times, and I was like, I would find myself trying to, you know, almost like micromanage a situation when it's like, I put this person in this position to be successful because they are successful and they are good at what they do. They're better at what they do than I am. So let that person live, let them create this space, you know. And it was really hard to do. And I throughout the process of the film, I think I got a little bit better at it every day, but it was still something that I definitely struggled with. And after we got done, it was like this realization of, man, like, you've got a lot of work to do on yourself when it comes to just trusting people. And that's, I mean, that's a good thing though, just to recognize that, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But also, you know, it furthers my belief that anything is possible. And no matter who you are, what your experience level is, if you commit to something and you put the work in, you can make it. And it may not be what you thought it was going to be when you started creating it. It'll take on a life of its own, and the universe will maybe push and pull you in different directions. And you should be receptive to that for sure. But just go make stuff. Just go try. It's worth it. It's worth it. And no matter what that end result looks like, the journey, the process is the most important part. And just the fact that you're putting yourself out there and giving it everything you can. So it furthers my belief that anybody can do anything, because you know, I'm pretty inexperienced in this space, but I wasn't afraid to fail, you know, and that's the biggest limitations we put. That I guess the biggest limiting factors in the world on us are ones we put on ourselves, and I didn't want to do that, and I don't want anybody else to either.
Nate Boyer, it was an absolute pleasure talking with you. Thank you for creating MVP, the organization, as well as this powerful film. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pamela. One quick thing for the organization, vetsandplayers.org is our website. You know, and so go check us out on the website. Obviously, the film is out now. It's you know, streaming on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and other places as well. But definitely check out the organization MVP, Emerging Vets and Players, as well.